Welcome to Success in Motion. Join us as we dive deep with top leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, uncovering strategies to grow, scale, and succeed.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Success in Motion podcast. This is your host, Michael Bishop, and I'm here with Elaine Hamm. Elaine Hamm has a pretty cool success story that she's going to share with us. She is a biotech entrepreneur. She's been doing this for over 10 years. She currently manages a portfolio of biotech firms, and she has a long history of success in the biotech industry. And I'm excited to have her on the team or on the show.
I'm happy to be here on the team or the show. I mean, I'm happy to take any job offer you might have to. As you can tell from my background, I take a lot of different jobs. So
yeah, it sounds like you have quite the resume. So give us a quick snapshot of your business right now. What do you and your company actually do in this biotech space?
So yeah, I wear a number of different hats, and my main hat is I'm an entrepreneur, and I specifically focus on drug development. And my area of expertise is really the early stage of drug development before we get into human clinical trials. And I manage a portfolio of companies. Most of them are in the neuro space, but that's not something that I intentionally designed. I'm actually a microbiologist by background, but when I started out my company, Ascend Bioventures, I was looking for companies and ideas that could be really transformational to a patient. And so nothing that was sort of iterative steps or just building upon, an already available drug. I really wanted just something that could just make a huge difference in a patient's life. And those happen to be in the neurospace that I found. So I have a company that's working on a drug for hearing related disorders. So we have one that's for hearing loss and one for tinnitus, the ringing in your ears. And then I have a company that is currently raising a Series A for our multiple sclerosis drug that we hope can be a standalone treatment for MS patients, and specifically focusing on remyelination, which could help prevent disability for MS patients. And then we also have a drug for endometriosis. And finally, I have a company that's working on gene therapies for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease. So they kind of run the spectrum, and that's, but they're all in that early stage piece where we're really high risk. We're mostly at the stage where drugs probably have a 10% chance of being successful. And I don't know why I picked that phase, because that makes the road awfully hard, but it's really where I like to spend my time. So
yeah, so as you were listing off the various businesses that you have, how do you keep them all straight? How do you make time to be an effective part of that many businesses? And how do you keep the information from one out of the other and not get mixed up?
Not get confused. Well, I do have a great team at each of those companies. And really, so that's first and foremost. I have a great team at each of those companies. I have an executive assistant who I would protect with my life. She helps me keep my life in order. I have a very supportive spouse. And I just really, I mean, that whole work-life balance thing, I don't think applies to me, because I really love what I do. And a lot of what my day is learning new things. And that just really gets me excited. So having long work hours is not just like part of the gig. It's what I look forward to the most, sadly. Now that I say that out loud, that doesn't sound I don't sound all that interesting of a person. I like to work a lot. But it really is such a fun area of entrepreneurship. And so, but in terms of keeping things straight, team is obviously the first one. But then what's great about the drug development industry is that it's very modular. And so we have a lot of fractional C-suite folks that spend their time on multiple projects, because, sometimes you have an experiment that goes for several months. And so you have an opportunity to work on other projects while that experiment's ongoing. And so we have the ability to sort of, come in and out of projects more easily. But project management is probably the thing that I have the greatest skill set in. Operations and project management is really my sweet spot. So
that's awesome. I like what you said about having a great team. I really like the book by Dan Sullivan, Who Not How. And it sounds like you have found a lot of who's right? Like there's no way that you could go and fully operate
Oh,
one
no,
company, let alone 5 or 10 companies, right?
absolutely not.
And
Yeah.
so finding those who's to step into the right positions to help move things along is crucial when you're a serial entrepreneur and you're doing multiple things at
Yeah.
once, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like too often people get bogged down with nobody can do it as good as me, so
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to let anybody else do it. But if you're really going to be successful in life, you have to break free of that.
You have to let
And
it go. Yeah, absolutely. You
yeah,
can't do everything. And it does take time to build sort of a Rolodex of resources and people that you trust. I mean, I tend to form teams around people that I've worked with before and we know each other. And I'm working my MS company, for example, right now. We brought in someone as the chief development officer. That was my first CEO. The first CEO for my first companies I started by myself. And like, we just got along great and we trust each other. And so he was just a natural fit. So I do tend ones I know I have a great relationship with, but building trust takes time. And, I think that I've spent enough time around, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, but I've also been in the ecosystem of commercialization for over 20. And so I've built that solid set of resources that I rely on. And I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to surround myself with people that are smarter than I am and that we can work well together.
yeah, that's a great point there is knowing you can't trust just anybody, but building a network over time is really what's going to help you find those right people to be able to put them in those key positions so that you can trust them.
Yeah.
Um, and so looking back at the biotech industry as a whole, I feel like there's a lot of biotech companies out there. There's a lot of competition for people's attention in that space.
Yep.
What is it that sets you apart um, from everybody else?
That's a great question. I think in some ways we have it a lot easier than like consumer products or anything that, has an immediate sort of customer facing product and sales and revenue. We have a very clear value proposition. Things like cure cancer, cure Alzheimer's. I mean, those are really clear like value propositions that we don't have to necessarily spell out. However, and one of the reasons why I'm not in the cancer space is there's a lot of people doing research in the cancer space, and there's a ton of products out there, and you really have to find the white space in what can sometimes be a really competitive space. So one would be I don't always look at the really highly already sort of saturated markets. So cancer is one, I don't have a background in cancer, and there's people doing it way better than I ever could. So I leave that to the experts. But two, it's also very crowded and highly competitive, and it's hard to be heard above the fray. I look for industries and technologies where there may not be a lot of people, or it's a completely underserved market. And so things like endometriosis, that's something that one, I actually suffer from endometriosis. So there is a personal connection to it, but also
Okay.
I know there's nothing out there too. And so that feels a little more blue sky for me. But there's also opportunities in the hearing loss space. It's really niche, huge market, but very, very niche, and it's had a lot of failures. So that also felt like a great place where I could make a big difference too. So
Okay, I do have a question about the hearing space.
yeah, sure.
Is what you're doing like a device that helps people hear better, or is it actually healing the eardrum?
So I have two different ones. So one is for tinnitus and one is for actual hearing. So in hearing loss, a lot of the reasons why you have hearing loss is because of the cochlea, that little snail-shaped organ in your ear, is lined with these things we call hair cells. They're not actually hair, but they look like little hairs around the inside of that cochlea. And as you get older, or you have some kind of trauma like noise, or if you're a military, blast can also cause this too, or even certain drugs, like there's types of antibiotics and chemotherapy that can actually cause the loss of those hair cells. So age, normal wear and tear, loud sounds, and some chemicals can cause the loss of those hair cells, which unfortunate, like if you lose those cells, they don't grow back. And that's sort of the biggest challenge is like, how do we regrow these cells that don't have the ability to regenerate themselves. And so we actually have found a technology developed actually here in Oklahoma, where I live, at the Huff Ear Institute, that actually regenerates those hair cells that line the cochlea, hoping we've cured a lot of deafness in guinea pigs. We're hoping to move that into in the clinic one day too. So, but that's our goal, is to how do we regenerate these cells?
Yeah, I think that is fantastic, because most people don't know this, but I used to work at a company where I was around a lot of heavy machinery, and I've lost some functionality in my left ear. And
Yeah.
I've been told that there's no getting it back. It's all about putting a device on there to amplify. And typically, my understanding is those devices actually do more damage over time to the ear, because it's just putting louder and louder sounds into your ear. And so having a way to actually regenerate those hairs to be able to receive those sounds that's game changer.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. It really is the holy grail that we in the industry have been looking for. And we're really hoping that it could be that game changer for people. It is, I mean, there's, when I first worked for this company, I was on the investment side, and we had a drug that it could help prevent hearing loss. So sometimes you can get damage, and all of these sort of cascades of events happen, that, a lot of inflammation and damage to those cells. It starts a process, and you can take things that can help sort of prevent that process. But people often don't really want vitamins. They want painkillers, right? Or they're not, you're young and you don't think about standing in front of that amp and at a concert, that it could be doing some real damage to you. I have been guilty of this myself, even to this day. I don't always perform good hearing health, but you don't think about it. And so we had a drug that could help prevent some of that, but that's just a really hard thing to get people to do. So we went for the harder thing, which is to regenerate hair cells instead.
Yeah, and most people don't think about their hearing until they start to lose it. And then you become overly conscious about it, and you're like, what can I do to get this back? People are
we're interesting creatures, aren't we?
We are interesting creatures.
You don't know what you had until it's gone, and that's common. And it's really tied to things that impact you later on in life. I mean, we see a common tie between hearing loss and dementia and cognitive issues. And so, and people tend to, when they have hearing loss, they tend to withdraw and not really socially engage, because it's harder and harder to hear. And so it can play a big role into sort of the quality of life in our older years. So we have to think about that now. And I'm guilty of it too. Again, I'm the same. So
yeah, as soon as you get through the human trials, I'd like to learn more about that. I don't want to be the first person.
No, yeah.
I do want to be on the list.
You want to be on the list. Well, it's so funny. I really do have an admiration for people that are willing to be in clinical trials, because that's such a huge important piece of what gets a drug to market. And I've participated in clinical trials myself. And once you get into the sort of the efficacy, or whether the drug works in a patient, you go through is it safe first, and we can pay patients to participate in those trials. But once we get into the safe one, we can't pay them, because that puts a bias on them of whether a drug could potentially work or not. And so they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, and then the hopeful intent of that they might be able to contribute. So I have a great admiration for people that participate in trials.
Yeah, that's definitely something that takes a brave individual. Most people are afraid of what you're going to do to them. Are they going to grow hair out of their nose instead of in their ears where it's supposed to be? Like, what are you actually doing to these people?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, you always want to make sure people understand exactly what it is that you're doing. I think that's where AI, now that we have AI starting to be prevalent in the biotech arena, it can be harder and harder, because you want people to understand exactly what they're getting themselves into. And if you don't truly understand the AI technology in which you're working with, and being able to explain that to people, that becomes harder and harder. Like, how is that machine making that decision? You have to be able to explain it to somebody so they know what they're getting into. So
yeah, that makes perfect sense. So looking at you, seems like you've had a very successful life. Looks like you have your fingers in a lot of different aspects. You've worked really hard to get to where you are today. Looking back at yourself 20 years ago,
Ooh, okay. Yep.
How would you, what advice would you give yourself to someone like you who's trying to get to where you are? Where do
Mm,
you start? What are
yeah.
some of the big hurdles that you had to overcome?
Yeah.
And how can you start off on the right foot getting into this biotech
That's a good
space?
question. So I would have been 24, 25 around that time. I was still in graduate school. And I think at that point, I was working on my PhD, and I've very much had sort of this plan laid out of like what I was going to do, checking boxes and going through my list. And as I accomplished something, I would mark it off and move to the next task. And then once I got my PhD, I realized I didn't want to go into academia and to be a straight, research scientist. And that was a little bit of a quarter life crisis. And so what I would probably tell my younger self would be to not be so stuck on a plan that you miss opportunities, and that I'd also tell myself to probably calm down a little bit, and not worry so much. And that really what I'm doing is building a data set that will tell me that no matter what path I'm going to be on, it's going to work out. It may not work out the way I think it's going to work out, or that I had planned it to work out, but that it will move me forward in some shape or form. I always had just sort of this very structured, very rigorous, view on how I should, attack my career. It was very much this ladder of progression, and it really doesn't have to be that way. It can be, I refer to it as the jungle gym. Like sometimes I've gone down, sometimes I've gone sideways, sometimes up. But I've always progressed in some shape or form. And I think that I would tell myself to take it down a notch. It'll be okay. So.
That is great advice. And too often we think of our life's journey as a straight ladder we're climbing up, but it's not. Sometimes we have to get up to a level so that we can see above the trees
Mm-hmm.
and we can say, hey, I'm going in a direction I don't want to go. And then you have to step down
Yep.
and get into the next thing that you want to be in. But
Yep.
what most people think about is, well, if you do that, aren't you failing?
Yeah.
And
No.
the answer is yes, you are, but that's okay, right? Because you didn't fail without gaining something, you failed with knowledge. And so
Absolutely.
you take all of those experience that you used to fail that in that direction to get you to where you want to be that much faster. And so you're not starting back over as that 24, 25-year-old, right?
Got-
You're starting back over from today with all the experience that you have from all of those endeavors that you've done that you didn't want to do anymore. And
Yeah.
now you're going to be able to jump into that next project 10 times faster than that first one you
Oh, and
came
that's
into.
exactly it. Like now, when I start a new project, that fear is gone. I do jump in faster. I take a lot more risks than I probably would have when I was younger. And I know that's a little bit like antithetical. Usually, when you're younger, you take more risks. But really, I was very risk averse, and I was not meant to be an entrepreneur because of that. Because I definitely didn't have the profile of an entrepreneur, because there was sort of this personality type that they tell you, and that you have to be ready to take risk and that kind of thing. And I'm not that person, but I would say now I am. But really, in a lot of ways, I'm not, because I have this great data set that says it'll be fine. You're not really taking that big of a risk in the long run. So.
What might look risky to somebody else is going to be less risky to you because you have all of those experiences from the years of doing things. You know what works and you know what doesn't. Now you just have to apply those to the new
Yep,
adventure.
exactly.
So looking back at what you've been doing over your career, what's been the biggest challenges that you've had to face?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think sort of those initial stages of getting off the path I would thought I was supposed to be on have been sort of the bigger challenges. Now I'm more easily I can get off paths more easily, just per our last sort of conversation of being able to take greater risks. But I think those first initial ones of when I left academia to go into industry, that was a big change. I mean, it was sort of always considered to be the dark side. And then so I actually left academia to go work at a pharmaceutical company as a chemist at the bench, and then hated that. I did not want to be at the bench anymore. And that was pretty I think not devastating, but like always had in my head, like, this is what I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be wearing a white coat and being in the lab and working with test tubes. But I ended up finding it to be quite repetitive and frankly boring. And that was a bit devastating of just like, this is what I thought I was going to do. And now I don't really want to do that anymore. And leaving the bench is another big sort of like hurdle in a scientist's career of like, what if I can't go back? And I'm leaving this skill set behind. And so those were sort of the harder moments in my career, were really the initial ones where it was these big leaps from what my path was supposed to be.
And then looking back at those challenges, those hurdles that you had to get over, would you say you made the right decision?
Oh, absolutely. Oh gosh, 100%. I mean, I'm not one of those people that was like, if I just done this, although every now and then I was like, maybe I should have gone to med school. It seems a little bit easier these days than trying to raise 20 million to make an MS drug. If I could just, go to a clinic and treat patients and go home, that would be great. But they also have it hard. Like, my hard days do not involve patient dying. So I will take that any day. But yeah, those are those moments where I'm so glad that I did take those risks and said out loud the thing that I didn't want to hear, of just like, I don't want to do this. You have in this, and like when you're younger, you sort of have this idea of what you want to be when you grow up, and you have what your parents and all these other people tell you what you should be. And then when you get to that point and you don't want to be it, it's a hard thing to say out loud of like, I don't want to be on this path anymore. And how do I get off? So.
And how do you get off without disappointing your entire family who have pushed you
100%,
so
yeah,
hard to do
exactly.
that? Yeah.
Well, and that was an interesting point too. Just like I was talking to one of these professors at the university. I was really terrified to tell my doctoral advisor that, I mean, I was set to go do a fellowship in his best friend's lab in Texas, and I was on that path. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And how do I tell Jimmy, my advisor? And he was just like, you're not giving him enough credit. He just wants the best for you, and he wants, and I that was just like, oh yeah, of course. Like, this isn't somebody that, I mean, he cares about me. He wants me to be happy. And I had that conversation, and it was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had to have. And I really, because I felt like I was leaving science, and I've said this many times, that one thing that stuck with me is that he said, you're a scientist as long as you perpetuate knowledge. And that was sort of this pivotal moment of like, oh yeah, like I don't have to wear a white coat and move stuff from one tube to another to be a scientist. So
yeah, that's awesome. So this next question that I have for you, you've already touched on this, so it might be a hard question for you to answer, or it might be super simple. But do you have any suggestions about juggling work and personal life?
Oh, this is, I don't know if there's ever anything like a work-life balance that's going to be perfect. I mean, some days work is on the heavier end of that teeter-totter, and sometimes life is. And so it always kind of changes. And as you get older and you have more life experiences, that balance is going to change again. But for me, the biggest thing was just having a job I love. And that sounds both easy and extremely hard. So just find something you love doing, and the end, you'll be happy. But it really is, I get excited to go to work every day. And that sounds so Pollyanna, Miss America kind of answer, but everything that's driven me to date and the things that I like has been learning. And that's what I get to do, whether it's, at an MS company or working at the Alliance for Artificial Intelligence, which is a whole brand new set of learning that I have to do in terms of understanding AI. Like, that's such a fun piece of my job. But then I think the other piece is really finding a partner that supports me, and not just like in a tell me about your day kind of way, but truly enables an equal relationship where, some days I'm not going to get to my chores, and I'm not going to make a great dinner, and all of these things are not going to go well, and he's there to step in, and vice versa. I mean, we started a wine bar together because that was his dream. And so he supported me for several years as I got my companies off the ground. And then it was my turn to do the same thing for him. So I think you really have to find a partner that's willing to go in with you on this and be truly supportive. So
That's awesome. You hit on a key point there. And I want to put my take on one of the things that you said. I think that work-life balance is a misnomer and people don't understand what that actually means.
Yeah.
Most people are trying to separate work from life,
Yeah. Right.
but work is part of life.
It
And
is.
so it's like life is 3 feet long and work is 2 feet long. So you have to fit it in there. And so
Yeah.
if you're spending two-thirds of your waking day doing something that you don't enjoy, you're going to be miserable.
You're going to be miserable and you're not going to have that work-life balance by the very nature
Right.
of it. Yeah.
But if you're doing something that you truly love,
Yeah.
right, you're going to find ways to make that happen. And then when you're home, you're actually going to be present.
Yeah.
You're going to spend time with those that you love because you're satisfied at work.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have this here about 10 years ago. I worked for a company that I did okay with the company, but it was just a drain on me. I felt terrible. At the end of the day, I just needed to veg out. Like I was not present when I came home. I was not a good father. I was not a good husband. I wasn't abusive by any means, but I was definitely neglectful. And that
Yeah.
haunts me, right? Because I was doing something that drained me instead of energized me. And so when I came home, I didn't have anything left to give.
100%. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
once I realized that, I switched. I found something that I'm actually passionate about.
Yeah.
Now I'm more present with my wife and kids. I
Mhm.
enjoy what I'm doing. I'm happier at work. I'm happier at home.
Yep.
And so finding that work-life balance for me is more about finding something that you enjoy doing and you can figure out how to monetize it so you can get paid to do what you enjoy.
Absolutely.
Um, and
Wholeheartedly.
so thanks for sharing that with me because I feel like we have a similar viewpoint
Yeah.
on some of those things.
Yeah.
So it sounds like things are going pretty well for you and your business. A lot of our guests are looking towards the future and how they can create passive income. So not just turning hours into pay, but having their money work for them.
Yeah.
Enhancing and even replacing their current income activities. What
Yeah.
is it that you think on this?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's the goal. Really, is just that I don't want my income to be tied to my work, which that doesn't. I mean, just because that puts such a stress on your job, and you have to like. I mean, that's where you get into situations where you're in a job that you hate, but you have to put food on the table and pay for the roof over your head, those types of things. So I definitely look for ways to invest in types of activities that I'm hoping will eventually put me in that position where my income isn't strictly tied to my job that I do, and that I have a job that I get to do, and it's enjoyable, and I'm not highly reliant on that. I've been on several boards. I mean, in companies where you either get equity, and hopefully that will pay off down the road. Those are always a little bit of a gamble. I mean, having 75% equity in a company and that company makes zero is still zero, that you'll make
Yeah.
back. And then some boards will actually pay you to be on those. And so I'm aiming to do more of those and being able to help share my skill set with others of what I've learned, and don't do this because I've done it and it's a terrible path. Don't do it, or hey,
Yeah.
have you thought about this? Just helping other entrepreneurs as a future endeavor of mine. So but I think it'll be hard for me to ever get away from the company operation side. I still love it. So, but my goal is to have that sort of more passive income down the road. So
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really interesting when you ask somebody about passive income because there are a lot of different ideas around what passive income actually is.
yeah.
Some people think that going in and buying an apartment complex and then having a bunch of tenants, like that's passive income. To an extent, it is, but on the other side, you just bought a business, right?
You just
And
bought a
so
business. Yeah. And you still, yeah, now you're a landlord and you don't want to be a slumlord. So
exactly. So finding those truly passive opportunities is really, uh, really key. And
yeah.
trying to vet those and finding out what level of involvement you have to be in those is not always easy. What do you use to vet opportunities that you might be looking at?
So I mean, I hate to say this, but I mean, a lot of what my career and education have been around has been vetting opportunities. So I've been on the tech transfer side, working at a university, understanding, should we file a patent on this, or is this a waste of time? Being on the venture capital side, it's going through and evaluating risk and coming up with a risk profile. Like, are we going to make zero money 3x, or are we going to make 16x? And trying to figure out the investment opportunity. And even now, when I start companies, is this going to be something that I'll give a damn about, but also one that I can make money as well? And how does this fit in with the current sort of climate and where that particular drug is in indication? So that's a lot of what my education is around, is just vetting and analysis. So that part is a little bit easier, but like whether understanding something is worth it emotionally and professionally is sort of the harder piece of like, I get so excited to take on projects or give my advice on projects. And I realize like, this is going to be a huge time suck, and this isn't going to be passive at all. And so I think getting more strict about the things, being more strict with my time is what I've started to do, and realizing that my time is money. And so if it's got to be truly passive, or at least something that I'll be really excited about before I start really putting my energy and my dollars behind it. But I will say, being in biotech, we're also just hoping for that one drug that makes it big. So, hopefully one of these will hit and I could go off and retire. And see, my goal, my customer is ultimately the pharma company that's going to buy me out. And then I can start the process over again and find a new drug and find the pharma partner. So hopefully one day that will happen.
You say that you'll hopefully sell out and then go retire. Just from the conversation that we've had, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to take those funds and go roll it into another.
I did. Yeah. You see, you laugh. I mean, that's exactly what I did. I've had a success. I had one with a hearing loss company. I sold it to a pharma partner. It was supposed to be this $100 million deal. I got a nice little payout, but at the same time, like, pharma is volatile, and that company actually ended up shutting down their early research division. And so not just my hearing loss drug, but all kinds of other drugs got returned back. So it came back to me, but it was a nice kind of homecoming. I got to be back with my original sort of, prodigal son, and we're moving that company forward and finding the next person to take that on. And so, even though I did get a nice payout, it just kind of encouraged me to want to do it more. Of just like, now I can really spend some time finding exactly the next new cool thing I get to work on. So, and hopefully
now that you have that little payout, I don't know what it was, but that little payout, you can feel a little bit more confident and comfortable knowing that you can do this. 100%. And that you also have the bandwidth now without the financial strain as much. As you can take those funds and support yourself while you're going
a little
to do
bit
the next
more
thing.
Breathing room, and gives me some time to open a wine bar during a pandemic, which was a crazy idea. But, having that first win really, the confidence and a little bit more breathing room. And I have in front of my computer I have a picture of the ear, a diagram at the inside of an ear. And that's one of my successful deals. And then I have a picture of just a question mark because of what's going to come next. That's my other framed photo. And then I also have pictures of the patients and each of the indications that I'm working on to kind of help keep me going. So
I love it. Well, Elaine, as we are wrapping up our interview, what exciting plans or initiatives do you have to work towards in the next 6 to 12 months?
6 to 12 months. A lot of what I'm working on right now is finding a new home for the hearing loss drug and moving that forward. And the other is to raise money to move our multiple sclerosis and endometriosis drug into clinical trials. Unfortunately, pharma is a very expensive endeavor. These experiments that we're about to undergo are incredibly expensive ones. It costs a lot to manufacture a drug, just even $2 million just to make the drug for the clinical trial. And the trials themselves are really expensive. So it's a hard uphill battle, but it will be so rewarding to get this into patients and hopefully make a difference in their lives. So it's, even though I hate cold calling and hate pitching, and I just want to do science, but I know it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, that's great. I think you have some pretty good endeavors that you're doing. I think you'll find a lot of people who want to support you in that. At least I hope you do, because I want to be able to get that hearing loss drug once it's been tested and vetted, so that I can get the hearing back in my left ear, right?
I promise I'll get it first and make sure that it's safe before I send it onward. But yeah, I will definitely sign up for if I was allowed to do my own clinical trials, which I'm not. But the moment it's available, I will definitely be taking it. So
perfect. Well, thank you for your time today and sharing some of the insights and tips that you have. If people would like to connect with you, what should they do?
Find me on LinkedIn, Elaine Hamm. I'm on there quite a bit, and we can kind of go from there. You can message me, and I have my lovely assistant who's great at helping me maintain my schedule and my sanity. So you can arrange a time to talk, or I also have a podcast that I'm with. I also work at Tulane University as their executive in residence, and we have something called Bio on the Bayou. So that's something that we kind of talk about different biotech issues and the joys of operating a startup company in that space. And so that's another thing you can find on wherever you find your podcast. So
perfect. Again, that is Elaine Hamm with 2 M's.
Yeah.
Elaine, it's been a pleasure having you on here. Everybody, this is the end of our Success in Motion podcast. I'm grateful for all of you for joining us, and we'll see who's up next. Talk soon.
Thanks for tuning into Success in Motion. Want to share your story? Visit successinmotionpodcast.com/guest to apply and be featured on the show.